This podcast is sponsored by Consumers Energy and the Power My Drive program. Start your EV journey at consumersenergy.com/EV. Learn EV basics like charging and cost savings. Then find your perfect EV. Partner with us for home charging installation. Get a $500 rebate on a home EV charger, or get $10 a month simply for charging off-peak. Need more guidance? Talk to an EV specialist to help you through the process. Get started at consumersenergy.com/EV. Welcome back to Kraig Schultz on the announcement of the Aptera Launch Edition. I wanted to have a little chat. Aptera had a live release of their Launch Edition, so there were a few surprises, and I wanted to talk about that. I'm a reservation holder, and by reservation holder, I mean I have $100 down. So this is not a big deal. I am interested in getting the vehicle, and I think Kraig is too. We're all super psyched about the efficiency, but the big surprise, I guess, if you will, is that the vehicle does not have DC fast charging. So, and to me, that's kind of a big deal. I flashed up a picture of the Launch Edition. They are going with the Luna 400-mile all-wheel drive edition, but there's no DC fast charging, and the full solar package. And they released some pictures of it, and it's a rendition. It's not a true model that they've built yet. They also went with the Tesla charger, aka North American charging standard, but AC only. And this was another surprise to me. Only 6.6 kilowatts of onboard charging. So what that effectively means to me for a 400-mile vehicle, and when they say 400 miles, I think that's only at 55 miles an hour. So if you're going 70 miles an hour, you're going to get less range. In the winter, you're going to get less range. And the recharge time that they're claiming is 57 miles per hour, which about makes sense, right? 6 kilowatts, about a mile per kilowatt hour of efficiency. So somewhere in that neighborhood, 60 miles an hour, 57, whatever you want to call it. And to me, that makes it no longer a viable road trip vehicle. I've since decided I am going to convert my reservation to the Launch Edition. I previously had 400 miles, two-wheel drive. I can't remember what else, a couple other things. But to me, the DC fast charging was the big deal. I always figured, well, if I can charge at 50 kilowatts, so that's 500 miles per hour of charging, then the range almost doesn't matter, because I can charge so fast that I can charge and move on, at 100 miles in whatever it is, 12 minutes, something like that. But that's gone. It still bothers me a little bit, but I still like the fact that it's a super efficient vehicle, and it's going to have the solar and all that sort of things. So, Kraig, what are your thoughts on the Launch Edition, and any ideas of what you think you might do in terms of your reservation?
Well, my reservation, I made it specifically to get the best value on the vehicle as far as price point. But when I optioned out my reservation, I went with just two-wheel drive, and I didn't need 3 motors to give me this crazy acceleration in 0 to 60 in 4 seconds. 0 to 60 in 6 seconds is faster than any car I've ever actually owned. So, I mean, I'd be very happy with that performance. And
what about the Michigan aspect of driving on snowy roads?
Well, that's a good question. Would I drive this in the salt? And that's a really good question, because is the vehicle, the heating system, going to be up to the task of driving it in the wintertime? So that's something to think about. So in Michigan, with our climate, would you drive yours? And I mean, this, to me, it's a collector's vehicle. I mean, it's a very special vehicle.
I think I would drive it in the winter. I'm not sure I would drive it in deep snow, but I would also want to know, are there any deleterious effects of driving in salt on salty roads, because you're going to get that salt spray underneath those wheel skirts and all that kind of fun stuff. And in addition to what you would normally have with any other vehicle, you now have in-hub motors. And how well are they sealed? And is the salt water going to leak in there? That's a good question. but I would fully expect it to be at the very minimum a 3-season vehicle, and maybe drive it a little bit in the snow and the slush, but not in deep snow.
Right. Well, any kind of snow is really going to hurt its range. It has a, advertised efficiency of around 100 watt hours per mile, which is how we're getting that kind of range with a relatively small battery. But if you start trying to plow any kind of snow with it, that's gonna, really hurt your range. But
But still, as a commuter vehicle, do you care?
Yeah,
Right. If you're just
the launch edition has 400 miles range, which is, wow, that's I mean, that's like right up there with the best of the cars you can buy right now. How much would you pay for a Tesla with 400-mile range?
Well, I'm getting ready to pay, whatever the current price is for the Tesla, $55,000 for a 320 some mile range vehicle. But there's a different utility there, right? So I'm not going to buy a Lucid Air with 520 miles range just to get that range. But absolutely, it's impressive. Yeah, no doubt about that. And I'm willing to take a hit in the winter because I know that's how that works. I've road tripped with EVs in the winter, and I think it has super utility for that. It's just, I used to make this trip from where I live in Muskegon to Pittsburgh, PA, quite a bit. It's 440 miles door to door to the person I was visiting. And now with the Aptera, that kind of trip is in jeopardy. Right. And similarly, if you drive to, let's say, Chicago O'Hare, I think it's 200 miles, something like that. If I remember correctly, I looked it up the other day, and I remember thinking to make that trip to pick somebody up from the airport, which, you can argue, are you going to pick up one person, right? Because it's the Aptera only has one passenger. To make that trip round trip, go to the airport, come back without a charge is already, again, in jeopardy.
Yeah.
So the utility to me has changed significantly.
You really have to look at what you're planning to use a vehicle for. So for me, whenever I'm starting to take a longer trip like that, I'm, and I hate to say it, I'm still in a gasoline powered minivan, but when I'm going on longer trips, it just gives us a lot more cargo capacity. So can you get, to me, the only compromise, I mean, I agree that the charging, the DC fast charging, everybody seems to be upset about that. So I don't know how in their surveys they missed that feature. But there's, people like you are, I think, probably talking about the right thing. It probably has to do with whether they have really good active cooling in the battery, whether they want to be shoving a lot of electrons in that battery, and whether they can cool it down.
I think we can, we don't know the reason behind it, but to me, it does seem like it's an engineering decision, right? So you're fully familiar with this process. You get to a point in a design and you say, okay, somewhere I got to stop, or I'm just going to, you get scope creep. And at some point you got to stop and actually make the thing, or you're just going to keep bleeding money. So I totally get it from that standpoint, right? And it sounds like they made the decision that either because of battery cooling or whatever module they would need to put into the vehicle to allow it to do DC fast charging, they didn't have the space, or again, the cooling, or they couldn't source it with today's, issues with supply chain. For whatever reason, they made this decision. Now, I think one way they could have combated that is by saying, we're going to take the AC charging level a little bit higher. Okay, this vehicle is so efficient that, we now have vehicles regularly getting 10, 11 kilowatts of onboard charging. I mean, just about every vehicle that you see now that's a modern vehicle, Tesla Model Y, the Mustang Mach-E, almost everything has got the 48 amp, in other words, 11.5-ish kilowatt onboard charger, which in an Aptera would add over 100 miles of range per hour. So if you sit for half an hour and have a cup of coffee, you can put in another 50 miles. If they're saying that you're going to put in a 6.6 or whatever kilowatt onboard charger, now you're at 60 miles per hour of range. And that's what my Zero SRS does right now. And I struggle with that a little bit. And that's why I want to get the second 6 kilowatt onboard charger that Zero offers to get me 12, because now my stops between rides are going to be much shorter.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so anyway, that was just my thought process, and we're
You know,
seeing AC chargers that are now there's
you
an
know
80
what?
amp. Yeah,
It might be the voltage of their system that's their problem. If they're at a lower voltage battery, and again, it's an engineering decision, but if they're at a lower voltage battery, then a lot of the
just like zero.
yeah, the DC fast charging is a hurdle because a lot of the DC fast charging stations can't go to the lower voltage and to charge that directly. So
Mhm.
that that would be an infrastructure issue. But so then it pushes them back into, like you're saying, the AC charging side of that. I mean, they could have just said, okay, well, if you want to have double the charging speed, then there's an upcharge of an extra $500 for that,
Yeah,
an extra
or
charging
a couple
module.
thousand, which is
Yeah,
essentially what zero does, right?
yeah,
They have on the premium SRS or SRF, you have 6 kilowatts, 6, 7-ish kilowatts onboard charging, and if you want the second charger, you have to pay significantly, and I think it's somewhere around $3,000 or something like that. Plus, you have to have a dealer installed. They could do that, and I think that could possibly solve the issues. But then you get back into space and cooling and all that other sort
yeah.
of thing that we don't know about what's going on. So anyway,
Well,
that's yeah,
it really comes down to use case. So,
absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
what are you planning to do? You're really planning to road trip with this vehicle, and what do you? I mean,
Yeah,
this is
I
going to be
was.
your road trip
But
vehicle.
yeah, I
So
mean, I was
you,
thinking. So again, my use case is I'm a near empty nester. So, and I have friends all over the country. And at some point, we wanted to visit a bunch of friends. And so
yeah,
now it's going to be a struggle, or you have to now say, okay, I'm only going to travel 300 miles in a day. And then I'm going to stay at a hotel that has level 2 charging. And then I'm going to do another. And that's not unreasonable, but that's not what I had in mind initially.
yeah. So
So,
when the use case is long distance travel like that, then they really shot themselves in the foot. And the question is, what percentage of the people who are interested in being, the first customers for Aptera, that are actually have the money to be able to say, hey, I'm going to buy this vehicle with the risks associated with, the first time that they've been in production with anything. My use case is I'm a regional, anytime I'm taking the longer trips, I'm thinking, a different type of vehicle. So um, in my fleet, I'm going to keep a long distance vehicle, and the rest of my vehicles are going to be short distance because, man, I haven't done the statistics, but it's like over
sure.
90% of my
Right.
trips, this vehicle would have more range than anything I've been driving. I'd be tickled with just the smaller 250-mile range. So I actually spec'd out, my reservation was for the smallest battery that was available with a 250-mile range, only two-wheel drive, which saves the weight of the in-wheel motor. It saves the weight and the cost of the controllers to drive three motors and any cabling that's associated with that. But I did get my upcharge was for my having solar panels. Every solar panel I could get on the vehicle. I think that's a really, really interesting option. And certainly, I guess I'm more into, I would like to see our vehicles and our approach to vehicles, uh, at least for me, the vehicle would, by having limitations on the vehicle, I would actually put limitations on my lifestyle to remind me that I need to slow down. I need to not be trying to travel thousands of miles a day. There's so much to see in every town you get to. Why wouldn't you stop, have a coffee? Your car's actually charging in the sun. It's like, slow down. He's like, hey, if there's someone sitting on their porch, stop. They're gonna talk to you if you stop and they're
You're going to
driving
be there for an
this
hour
vehicle.
anyway.
George Jetson just arrived, and he's like, wait, let's so what a way to meet people and to spread the word about the future, that hey, there's a reason why I'm driving this vehicle that looks like it's from the future. It's because in order for us to have any hope of getting in balance with our ecosystem and to actually not kill off all the other species on the planet and ourselves included, we need to be thinking radically about the vehicles we drive. Um, what they look like and how efficient they are. And if the vehicle can just recharge itself by actually driving a bit slower and stopping more often, we don't need the DC fast charging. In fact, I think that that's a needed change in our lifestyle, that we need to slow down. Maybe it shouldn't have any charging at all. We can't connect to the
Just the
grid.
solar. Yeah.
It's, the whole point of the car is we need to get in balance. If the solar panels can't charge the car enough for you to get where you're going, well, maybe you shouldn't be going there. Or maybe, you just need to slow down on your way. When we used to ride horses, you didn't ride your horse into the ground. You'd stop and let it graze, get it some water. And we need the same thing, I think, in our lifestyles, is a chance to slow down the pace, take a little more time, meet people along the way. That's the treadmill that I've been trying to get off for the last half of my life, is this rush of always trying to get to work on time. I remember getting up in the morning, 4 a.m, going for a run in the dark, getting in my car, rushing to work to get there on time, working all day long. And then, it's dark by the time I'm leaving work to come home. I'm driving home in the dark. It's like, whoa, something's wrong, So at least if I can like scale back so I can enjoy seeing the sunrise in the morning when I'm driving to work. And just, I guess I wouldn't want to see the sunset on the way home from work. I'd prefer to see sunset from,
Depends on what time of year. Here in Michigan, it's like 5:30 anyway.
With my family or something. Yeah, to enjoy the earth as for its beauty that it is.
And I think you're bringing up an interesting point that we didn't cover in our EV efficiency point that I'd actually hoped to cover, the Jevons Paradox. So what is that? You know what that is? And what does it mean? What does it mean in terms of what you just said?
Well, you and I are a classic example of this. As we've gotten into our electric motorcycles, I know that when I built my first electric motorcycle that was streamlined and had almost 100-mile range, I started riding the motorcycle. I'd be going on all these extra drives and stuff. The Jevons Paradox is as we get more efficient, we actually just consume more. We drive more miles. So if the vehicle we're driving is very efficient, so the fuel cost is very low, then we don't worry about the fuel cost.
Right. Anymore. We don't conserve. We actually use more.
Yeah.
Right. So then that's the paradox.
Yeah. And so that there's a good feedback loop with the fuel costs being high, whether the price per gallon is higher, or if, we have the whole point is that our pocketbook regulates our lifestyle to some extent, and that actually can be a good thing. And so, having this vehicle that gets the equivalent of 300 and almost 350 miles per gallon equivalent, the fuel cost is going to be almost nothing. And then with the
and then you start using it more, right? And then we're still using more energy. And that's back to your point that now we're charging and using more energy. So I think that's a great point. So maybe I need to look in the mirror and say, I know maybe I don't need to be driving this much.
Well, you would chart, maybe you'd chart, look at a different metric. Maybe you should chart your miles per year that you're traveling. More importantly, I think you would look at energy, although that's the Jevons Paradox, because if you look at miles per year. So I don't know.
Now I can, compared to a Tesla Model 3, you can drive this vehicle 3 times more for the same amount of energy. Right. Yeah. But then you're not saving anything. The launch edition is not what you had spec'd. What's your thought as far as are you going to stick with your original reservation and wait, or are you interested in getting the launch edition just so you can get it into your grubby little hands a little bit sooner?
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of reasons we purchase vehicles, and they're more than just transportation. But for me, I'm looking at the price point. The way I have mine spec'd out, it's around 25,000. It was $5,000 less than the launch edition. What's the launch edition?
The launch edition is 33,200.
Okay. So mine
33,200.
Yeah, I checked mine today. Mine's at 28,000. So that's actually
so 5,000-ish cheaper.
Yeah, but five it's like 20% less, right? Savings. Yeah.
But you might not get it now till, who knows with the production, right? They're saying about a year from now for the launch edition. And so that would be January, February 2024.
Yeah.
And I think they said they want to make 5,000, something like that. And said, well, okay. But anyway,
I
let's
think,
just
I
assume
think,
that that's going to happen. But
yeah,
that would put the other editions end of 2024.
yeah. So to me, there's a trade-off. One is because they're a launch company, I think that there's a lot of risk associated with it if you wait. To me, this vehicle is changing fundamentally how what we think looks good as far as a vehicle, and so I think it's a collector's edition vehicle, and I'm concerned about whether the company actually will make it past the first five or 10,000 vehicles before they run into some financial issues. Let's face it, the next few years are going to be pretty rocky financially for everybody in any case, but especially a startup company. But so if you desperately, or you want to be able to get your hands on one, I think that you definitely should go with a launch edition. There's more chance that you can get one. And but then the cons for getting that launch edition is there's going to be some bugs. There's going to be some things. There'll probably be some recalls. And if the company does go out of business, then you're going to have to work with your local electronics experts to be able to keep that vehicle functioning.
That's you, by the way, just so you know.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's people like me, and that's not a problem. I think that this vehicle will actually always increase in value just because it's the first of its kind. So I think it's a wise investment to get into it early, but for me, it's also a wise investment to wait, because I guess I'm looking at, if I get half the battery, that means that twice as many of the vehicles of my spec can get on the road. So I'm also, while I'm an early adopter or maybe an evangelist, I don't always like to be on the first edition of software to have all the bugs and all the things getting worked out. I guess I'd like to see those things worked out before I get my vehicle. And there's some durability issues that we're going to find with any new vehicle platform. So yeah, there's pros and cons, and besides that, I'll be able to get to ride in yours, Karl.
Yeah, and then when I get impatient with the charging, then I'll sell you mine and I'll buy the new one with the DC fast charging.
There you go. There you go. Yeah.
Great.
So no,
All
I
right.
think
Well,
I think it's a
yeah.
great vehicle, and I think that for the efficiency and for the statement that it makes.
I think you're going to have a ton of people asking, like you said, when you pull over, people see that now with the Arcimotos, which are out there. You can't go anywhere. Even, the newer vehicles that are fairly standard. We had a discussion with Luke Wilson about his Ford Mustang, and he said everywhere he went, people are asking about it. They'll stop you at the charger and ask you all about it. And I remember that I had one of the first Eagle Talons in 1990, which was essentially a Mitsubishi Eclipse rebadged, and it was a radically different vehicle. And I remember going on a road trip with it. I was on a ferry somewhere, and there was a Ferrari next to me, and everybody clustered around my car because they had never seen one before. And I thought that was kind of cool, being a young man. It's like, oh, I'm the center of attention. So yeah, you're definitely going to get that with the Aptera.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. It's going to draw more attention than any supercar will, and that's both a pro and a con. It kind of boosts your ego, but at the same time, it becomes a pain in the butt if you're just going to get milk. So you're going to have to keep that other car. I just want to go get milk. I don't want to.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to take a cooler with me so the milk doesn't go bad while I'm talking to people. But obviously, we're both into EVs, and we want to evangelize about that. So I think there is an opportunity there to tell people about efficiency and all these sorts of things. And I think those are worthwhile discussions, and people rethink how they drive. You tell people, even now with EVs, if you tell people, well, this is 5 cents a mile, and if you drive a regular vehicle, it's 15 to 20 cents a mile. Yeah. And suddenly it's like, oh wait, it only costs you $10 to fill this thing up. That's amazing. Maybe I need to look into this after all. And I think those are really great conversations to have.
Yeah. Yeah, and people are watching us. People, Karl, with your electric vehicles, and I know people in my family. I've had my electric cars for many years, and they've been watching. They've been waiting. It's like, is that really going to work? Is it going to wear out? When's he going to have problems? And
yeah,
and
when's
now
the battery going to fail? Right. That's
so now they're coming to the conclusion. It's like, oh well, yeah, I guess it's worked out. They're reliable. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I'm willing to actually think about buying one now. So we're on to the next thing, and that's this.
Yep.
What do we call the shape of the Aptera? I think I don't want to call it a penguin. I think it looks better than that. I think it looks more
Well, I
like
think
a
doesn't
bird.
Aptera in Greek mean something like flightless bird? Isn't that what it is? It's more like a dolphin because of the tail that it has, right? It's got a horizontal tail.
Flightless bird is a penguin.
Is
No,
there you
but
go. It's a penguin. Okay, that's not exactly what you want to go for marketing.
well, you know,
Linux
penguins
does
are,
that.
yeah, penguins are really good in the water though. They swim great.
Yes,
Yeah.
right. They're super sleek. Well, good. Thank you.
I'm
Yeah.
rooting for you. I hope that you get the first one in West Michigan, and that I get to ride around there with you. And then when I get mine, we can have a fuel economy competition, and hopefully I can edge you out because
Because yours will be lighter weight
mine will be lighter weight, and that's
and two-wheel
key
drive.
factor.
To be honest, I really wanted the two-wheel drive. I didn't need the three, but to me that's the only, well, other than the DC fast charging, that's the only concession really. It's more or less the spec that I wanted, but I wanted faster charging. But
Yeah.
like you said, maybe I need to slow down my life and say, you know, I need to spend a little bit of time in this little town that I'm now forced to be in because I can't go any further. And if I can't charge at a level 2 charger, I'm going to hit the local campground and sleep in my vehicle and charge on a 50 amp RV plug, and in the morning it'll be full.
Yeah.
So
yeah, there's only one thing that'll draw more attention than an Aptera, and that's two Apteras. when we're on a camping trip, heading to the middle of nowhere with our solar cars.
Norhouse Dunes, right?
Yeah, that'll be awesome.
All right, Craig. Well, thanks for taking the time to speak to me. And yeah, we'll do it again sometime.